Good evening, everyone. Money Date. Welcome. How are you guys doing? I hope well. I am doing fantastic. I found this spot in my office that has the sun coming through the window, and so perfect, natural light. I don't need to turn on my little setup here, so I'm excited about that. Hopefully it lasts a little while, at least for the duration of our money date. Welcome, it's Wednesday, and the song I'm playing today is by Demi Lovato, and it's called Confident. So I thought that all of us need a little bit more confidence, especially when it comes to our finances. And you know, the good news, it can be learned, right? Nobody's born knowing everything. What's wrong with being confident? Hi, Jim. Thanks for hopping on. All right, I hope you can see me. Wow, it's so bright, but I love it. It's natural light, so the best for shooting videos. All right, money date. We come together here every Wednesday, 6 o'clock, and we talk about our finances, right? And a money date concept came around when I finally said it was enough. I had to have a structure where I was able to have conversation. First conversation with myself, right, being accountable to myself, and then that conversation extended to having it with my significant other. And after doing that for a while, I've decided to have a conversation with all of you. So I welcome you and I invite you to join me on this conversation. It's been interesting a few last days since last week with the Equifax data breach. I am not talking about that today, but it is kind of along those lines, and I've got some tips and tricks for you, and I'll share that as we go. But before we get into the meat of the whole discussion, let's start with our normal outline of what happens on a money date. So if you're hopping on, it would be awesome if you dropped in the chat and said something. That way I know you're here. I'll welcome you, say hello, introduce yourself. This is the first time. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who come here regularly, awesome. Thanks for doing that as well. And so yes, say something in the chat. It's always nice to have your comments here, okay? And I want to make sure that hi Jim, yes, I see you commenting. So thanks so much. Okay, well, the first thing that I want to talk about, and I always start, hi Chelsea, good to have you here. So the first thing I always bring up on the money date, and I love quotes, right? Those are the things that I actually constantly look for to see if there's something that can reinforce the concept, bring a point home. Hi Wanda, good to have you here. And so the quote for today's money date is this, and it goes well with the topic, right, for our discussion. In the world where everyone is overexposed, the coolest thing you can do is maintain your mastery. If you think about it, I don't know who this quote is by. It was an anonymous author, but I thought about this, right, and it really ties well to our finances and maybe other areas of your life. If you can master something, right, and mastery means you are really a professional, right? It doesn't have to be a career, but a skill, right? I'm talking about skills or understanding a concept. Then you're going to be on a whole different level. And so how do I translate this to finances, or even being able to come and join me on these money dates, right? The idea is that you learn a little bit of something every time, right? And that's the whole idea. And then you can implement that in your life. So I hope you liked the quote. I thought it was inspiring, but a question I want you to ponder on is, what are you good at? What kind of skills you have that are at this mastery level, right? Think about it, because I know that every one of us has something that they're good at. So I happen to know a little bit, or maybe a lot more, about finances. And so I'm here on this other side of the screen talking to you about some of the things that I know a little bit more about. So Now, for those of you who are here first time, I know Wanda, you've been on Money Dates with me before. Chelsea, I think this is first time. Jim, you are regular as well. And for those of you who are watching and have been on, Money Date is a time that you allot for yourself every week. I happen to like Wednesdays when you check in with yourself, okay? And normally there's a couple of questions that we need to ask ourselves, right? To be able to check in and have a tracking system to figure out where things are. These are very basic questions. What is our spending? Where do we stand as far as our expenditures go for this week? So it also happens that this is a second week in the month. Yes, welcome Chelsea. It is your first time here. Glad to have you. So where do you stand as far as your spending goes? I like the idea of doing this weekly because the more frequent you do it, the better you become. Now, these days it's very easy to track your spending. Both Jim and I advocate to all of our clients, right, to use aggregation services such as Mint.com or Quicken, right, or even Personal Capital. Hi Tara, thanks for joining. To allow you to passively keep track of your expenses. Okay, so there should be no excuses whatsoever that you have no idea where your expenses are at any point in time. Now, if you don't want to use any of those aggregation services, that's fine. You have access to your bank account, you have access to your credit cards. Log in and double check what's going on. So that's number one. Number two, we all have savings goals, or we should have savings goals. And the more frequent we stay on the top of our goals, and we talked about this last time on our Money Date last week, where we discussed the habits of the rich people. They have goals. They have very specific goals. And what I shared with you is that my goals are specific and I write them twice a day because that's how focused you need to be in order to achieve something. Now, and number three is our income, right? Because we can't do first two without earning an income. Some of us have a steady paychecks, right? We get paid on certain days of the month. Maybe it's bi-weekly, maybe it's every 2 weeks, maybe it's once a month like Jim and I. Some of us have businesses, some of us work on variable income. So all of that is fine, it's a structure. None of that precludes you from still understanding where do you stand and how much money do you make. Do you need to make more? That is the question that I'm trying to answer. So underneath of all of what we're discussing today, and typically on Money Dates, every Wednesday, at least, right? You can come here and watch me talk. I appreciate that very much. But when you leave here today, I need you to start thinking about these three basic questions, right? And if you've never joined me for my Money Flow course, that's something that we can talk about more. But how do you have a system that allows you to track these things very easily, very passively, not spending a whole lot of time? Okay, so that's what Money Date is all about. But besides that, there's a couple other things that I do to have a deeper conversation with you. Now, here's where you get a chance to chat with me because it's really awesome if I can have some engagement. Now, if any time during this conversation you find that this is valuable to you, please share this out, okay? That's the biggest compliment I can receive when you guys share this out. So next thing is on a list for discussion is a money win. And you may notice that I am kind of around this word money. I like it, right? It's, there's some powerful magic around it. I don't know how to explain it, but that's how I think of it. So a lot of things that I do have to do with money, right? So what I'd like you to do is think about a money win. And so a money win is something that has been good for you in the last week that has to do around your money. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a financial concept. It doesn't have to be that you've saved so much or you've earned so much or you didn't spend as much. All of that is great, but I want you to start thinking bigger and broader because everything we do has a financial ramification, okay? So one of the things I've learned in the mastermind group that I was part of, still am, is that being grateful for things that happen. And the only way to realize that is actually starting thinking about it. So here's I'm going to share my win, my money win, because I always do. But it would be awesome to know what your wins are. Okay, so I'll give you an example what I consider a money win in the last week that I'm proud of, or at least I'm proud of to mention, right? So I was invited back, and I talked about this a little while ago as well. Actually, last week. Yes, I remember. Like, one of the rich habits or suggestion was to volunteer your time. So I am extremely proud that I was invited back to participate on a conference planning committee for this huge conference that takes place every year in San Francisco. And it's been going on for 45 years. And no, I wasn't there for the first 45 years, actually just 1 year. But it's an awesome group of people, and it's a financial planning conference because that's the profession I'm in. But it was actually pretty neat that I participated last year. Definitely spent a lot of time in a conference like that, which is about 750 attendees. You usually plan way in advance, and I got to appreciate attending a conference from a whole different experience, because I know what's going on behind the scenes. I know how long it takes to put everything together, and the best part of all of this is that I got to interact with some interesting people. So my money win in this idea, and so we're just starting to plan conference for next year. So it's going to take place in San Francisco in May of 2018. But my money win is that these connections that I've made, friends that I've acquired of being part of this committee, that's priceless. So that's my money win for the week. I actually, we had a first meeting, and I wanted to share that with you, because sometimes it's not about dollars in your bank account, right? They help, but at the end of the day, who do you know? Who are the people in your circle? So I'm extremely proud of that. Hi Justin, thanks for joining. We're talking about money here, and I think this is your first time. So drop a note in the chat, say hello. Hi Debbie, thanks for coming on. So here's what I've got for you, okay? On Saturday, we talked a little bit about what happens when events like a data breach at the major, right, credit bureau happens, where all of our data and information is stored, and how do we as consumers that practically have no ability to control any of that, what are some of the best practices that we can put in place today, right? Because all we have to do is deal with the situation, right? And so let's talk about I've shared some of the tips on Saturday. So if you haven't watched that video, I would like you to check it out. It's called Data Breach. It was on Saturday this past week. But here's some of the tips. So realizing that we live in a world where there is no privacy anymore, right? You have to come to terms with that. I had a client meeting earlier today, and we were talking about what were we talking about? Oh, we were talking about password manager, right? And I'll talk about this a little bit as well, because that's one of the things that I put in practice for myself in the business and personally. But a client had like this smirky smile on his face when I said, well, one of the ways you can actually maintain sanity in all of your financial stuff is to have a password manager. And he was like, well, I don't know who to believe more, the credit bureau like Equifax or a password manager. So the point is that there is no privacy. But here's some tips. So I've got 10 tips for you that you can put in place right now and make that your regular practice to maintain the best financial privacy you can actually have. Yes. Chelsea mentioned that she was part of the mastermind. Good. Okay. So here's number one. One of the things that I am guilty of, and I think it's more of I don't know what it is, okay? But I need to do more of this. So number one is updating your computer, your mobile devices, your tablets, right? So a lot of times you get a little notification that there are notifications that you need to update, restarting your devices, whether it's a phone or computer or tablet. And so the reason for that is that it allows you to recycle, right? It allows you to clear some of the memory. It allows you to restart everything. So sometimes computers get slow, sometimes phones get slow. So again, keeping updates, your apps, and various browsers up to date regularly is the very first step. And I'm a Mac user. I love it. That's the best thing that happened to me since, not sliced bread, but maybe Swiss cheese. I'm more into cheese than bread. I am up to date on Join.me. I know, Jim and I, this is funny, I'll tell you this story. Jim, we have this contest, so every time we have this program called Join.me, and we use this to do screen share for client meetings, and so we've been going back and forth about changing the password. So yes, I've been kind of good at it, but it's for other reasons. It's not that I am that good. So yes, just a reminder, with Macs it's really easy. You just kind of shut your computer and off you go. So sometimes I forget that it's actually necessary. Same thing with the phone. So updating, restarting to kind of get all that cleared up and ready to go. Okay, so here's tip number 2. Use strong passwords. And we'll talk about the password manager, but to begin with, and I'm talking about passwords, I mean, you have passwords for a million things these days, starting from the Facebook account to your bank account to even filing your tax return. You need to have a password and a PIN code. So you cannot go anywhere with a password without a password. And having a password that's like 1, 2, 3, 4 or some simple phrase is not going to get you far. And using that password for all of your type of accounts, right? So think about accounts. So if I had to sort of make a choice of how strong to make my passwords, I would think about accounts that have the most exposure, right? So if it's financial accounts, right? My bank, my investment accounts, my email account, that has a lot of exposure, particularly my work account. So those are the things that I want to protect the most. So those passwords have to be strong. Now, going back to the conversation about a password manager. So what password manager does, and the one that we use is called LastPass. Ooh, I think I'm losing my light. The sun is not in my window anymore. But it was pretty good. I think you can still see me. So the password manager that we use is called LastPass. What it allows you to do is, because there are so many passwords, it's a vault. It stores all your passwords. And I know it sounds silly, right? Because you're thinking, oh my gosh, why would I want to trust somebody with my passwords? You can create your own vault. You can write your password on a piece of paper and carry it with you, but I would argue with you that that's not any safer than having something that's stored, in a designated place. Now, the advantage of something like that is that you have, first of all, the passwords, the internal passwords for various things that you have, those passwords and logins, they can be auto-generated. So at a lot of times, you don't even know what the password is. It's all synced up and connected to your password manager. Another beauty of that is that it can be used across all of your devices, okay? Your phone, your computer, and my computer went to sleep, so I want to make sure it stays on. So that's the beauty of it, not having to remember it, and not having to worry that every time when you need to use join.me, Jim, you have to reset the password. So I'll let this one go. You're next in line to reset that password if it doesn't work. I already did it this week. So, okay, so that's my tip number 2. Number 3 is two-step authentication process. I talked about this on Saturday, right? I cannot advocate for this highly enough. Now, it's going back to talking about where do you need to have extra protection, okay? So all your financial accounts, banks, investment accounts, any institution that has to do with money, you better figure out how can you get an extra layer of protection. So two-step authentication process, or verification is another word. What it allows you to do is set up an extra layer of adding basically a second password, if you want to call it that. But what it does, it sends a special code to your cell phone, right? So every time you log in, you have to have a password and you have to have a code. If you do not have a code, you cannot get in, okay? So particularly for financial accounts. Now, email is also a very sensitive place. And I talked about this as well because the data that was exposed in the Equifax data breach, there's such a diversity of what's, at least from what we understand, there's such a diversity from what's been exposed, from our social security numbers to our birthdays to our addresses. So all of this has a lot of different impact on what could happen. So somebody can steal your identity pretty easily with just knowing your social security number, right? But if you have these systems in place, so think about this logically, if you have these systems in place, somebody trying to set up an account in your name or log into one of your accounts, and all of a sudden you have this two-step verification process, they aren't going to be able to get the code, right? So a lot of these things you sort of do gradually to give you that addition. It's like an onion, if you think about it. Not peeling the onion, but putting the skins back. So at the very core is the most precious information you have. And Jim is commenting, separate computer for financial accounts only. Yes, actually, I like that. One of our clients commented that he particularly, I've never seen anybody do that. I only have, well, I have a laptop, I have a desktop, but I do everything on my laptop. So having a separate computer to do anything that has to deal with your financial accounts. So I don't know, that could be an interesting development, but it's like, do you have to carry that computer with you? And you know, with mobile devices sort of being the primary use these days, I mean, I like that. I'm not sure how practical that is for everybody. Okay, so now number 4, so we kind of gradually, right, the most important core of our onion is in the middle, our most secured personal information, and then we're adding all of these layers to make sure that we covered mobile devices. Okay, this very thing that I'm on right now doing this video, right? So what kind of a protection do you have? Whether it's an iPhone or Android phone or whatever the device is, smartphone, flip phone. I don't know flip phones if they have a way to put a, they don't exist probably anymore, but smartphones, do you have a password on your phone? What happens if it falls out of your pocket? Can you actually be sure that nobody can get inside your phone? Because remember that banking app that you downloaded to make sure that you can check your balances is a way for somebody to get into your personal financial information. But if you have a LastPass, or LastPass is not the only password manager, but if you have a program that allows you for randomly generated password and stores your password, you have to have that in place. If you have two-step verification process, that has to be passed. So it's kind of like you're putting these gates in front of somebody to try to make it much more difficult. I'm not saying that this is guaranteed to work, because there's always going to be some kind of data breaches, all kinds of stuff. There is no privacy. That's the point. But there's still ways that you can protect yourself. Okay? Now, number 5, and I think we all are guilty of this from time to time, but public Wi-Fi. When was the last time, and do you even realize, this is the thing that I actually have to think a little bit more, but I have taken a precaution, is that I use something called a virtual private network. So when you go to Starbucks or Pete's Coffee or Panera Bread, anywhere that you can connect, or your phone automatically connects to public Wi-Fi, you are exposing yourself to some serious consequences. Okay, so one of the recommendations I have is create something that's called a virtual private network. It's a special kind of network between your device and the internet connection that only you have access to. When everybody's accessing the Wi-Fi, right, you buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks or Pete's and they give you a special code, everybody, right, everybody that sits around in the coffee shop, and then people around that you may not even see, who are getting access to that Wi-Fi. So having a special application or service, so the one that we use is called Cloak, And actually, I think they're going to be acquired by another company and changing a name. But if you Google around, what are some of the providers that have virtual private networks that you can have, again, on your computer and on your phone. Even when I'm flying, I'll tell you this, even when I'm flying and I connect to the internet, so if I fly United, I'm a loyal customer of United, every time I connect to United Wi-Fi, and you would think like, okay, who is going to want to get a hold of whatever it is that I'm doing here on this plane, but there's so many people as well accessing that Wi-Fi, and I'm up in the sky. You bet I'm turning my app on to make sure that I have my private secure connection, okay? Number 6. So number 6 and number 7 kind of go back to reiterate what I talked about in the Equifax data breach. Now, some people are more concerned about their identity being stolen, their credit report being ruined. So there are precautions that you can take. Credit freeze is definitely one of those options, right? And I would invite you to Google back a little bit and see what's available these days. I'll put a little bit of light on here and see if it helps. I think it's better. What's available, but so basically every credit agency that there is today, there's 3 of them, actually there's 4, but the 3 major ones, credit bureaus, allow you to freeze your credit, okay? So when you freeze your credit, what that means is if you're going to apply for a loan, a credit card, a loan, a mortgage, whatever it is, nobody's gonna be able to access your account. You have to have a special PIN, and there's some articles out there that talk about the fact that, and Equifax I don't think was able to confirm, at least so far I haven't seen any articles about whether the information that they exposed had anything to do with the PIN numbers, because you have to have a special number to be able to unfreeze your credit report so that you can proceed with credit applications, okay? And then the number 7 is identity protection, monitoring for your identity protection. Now, this is one of those things that, basically credit monitoring, this is one of those things that I think you are better off, okay? And right now is a good time, okay? If you have not done this, pull your credit report, okay? Now, if you've done it in the last few months, that's probably okay, but I would still advise to do it again every quarter, because there's a credit report that you are allowed to have for free from all of these 3 credit reporting agencies. So basically, if you look at the timeline of 12 months, every quarter you should be able to pull a credit report. If you haven't done it, that's fine. Go ahead and get one. So annualcreditreport.com, that's the source for getting your credit report. At the very least, right, because we can talk and speculate here about what will actually really happen with all of our data. And I think tomorrow, right, Jim, 13th and 14th is when you and I are supposed to check back and see with Equifax whether we really were affected or not, but their data breach, which sounds still kind of crazy, okay? So you can set up the monitoring and have notifications, but that's a little bit crazy because that's just a lot of notifications in my mind. But if you're fine with doing something like that, I don't have any objections. Number 8, private mail boxes and PO boxes. Now, I don't have a separate mailbox, but I have an office address and I have a home address. But I'll tell you that probably over the last few years, I don't get that much mail anymore. Maybe it's not a good thing because I've transitioned to having things delivered to me by email, electronic statements, right? So very few things that come in the mail. But some people are actually, advocating for having a PO box so they feel more safe if the mail, hi Anna, thanks for joining, if their mail doesn't come to their home. So it's fine to do something like that. You can set up certain mail, if it has to do with personal finances or whatever, bank statements, credit card statements, if you want that to go to PO box, that's fine. You remember there's cost in having something like that. But I'm just kind of thinking like, okay, if you want your packages delivered, right? I order things from Amazon a lot. So I don't think it's convenient, and I don't want to be running to to that PO box every time there's a delivery. So, but you can do something like that. Now, encryption, okay? And I had received an email. This is our tip number 9. We're almost done, promise you. I received an email from, I think it was Google, that, no, maybe I saw a video or something on Facebook. Somebody was talking about this. So October 1. So when you type in a URL of a particular site that you're trying to visit, and you know that first prefix, the HTTPS, which is supposed to have a letter S, that designates that S stands for secure, okay? So if you see a site that does not have that letter S, you better be careful. And if it's a site that has anything to do with personal finances, money, any personal information, I wouldn't say even just personal finances, you better be avoiding. So so what Google announced, and this is from that video if I'm recalling, that October 1st, sites that don't have, and so I know this from even our personal experience with our Main Street site, we actually had to get a special certificate, right, to make sure that we certified our website as a secure place for people to come. We're not asking for any personal information, but still, right, even if they're just subscribing to our blog, right, we need to make sure to tell them that's an indication that the site is secure. So be on the lookout. I frequently overlook those things and just like, you know, kind of pass by, but that's going to be something that, so October 1st, Google is going to penalize those sites who do not have those certificates. So I think I like that idea that they're taking even more precautionary steps to help with that, okay? And finally, number 10. So how are you guys doing? Any comments so far? Are you still hanging with me? Okay, good. I like it. Okay. Now, we live in the cloud. This is my tip number 10, right? So where do you store your information, right? Think about it. I have 2 computers and I frequently just use my laptop, but I can work anywhere. So all of my data, personal, professional data, photographs, everything is secured somewhere in the cloud, okay? So how secure are those storage programs, right? That's what they are. So whether you're using a Google Drive or Dropbox or Box, there's all kinds of programs out there. How secure is something like that? And what information are you actually keeping in the cloud? And are you doing a backup, right? That's one of the things that I need to get better at. And Apple has, is a Time Machine? I think, yeah, Time Machine that allows for backup. But the thing is, there's not much on my computer. Hi, Yuri. Thanks for joining. It's about time. What's for dinner? I hope you're cooking. Because I'm not, or not yet. So what kind of information are you storing, right? If you're getting, for example, statements in the mail, right, for your bank account, for your investment account, what are you doing with that information? We have some clients who actually scan those documents, or if you're not, if you're getting them through email and you're downloading them, where are you storing that information? So you've got to be, again, careful. What providers do you use, and do you completely trust where your data goes? So for example, if something happens, and Jim probably should do his own show and share his story about his incident with the computer and how he was able to get all of his data back pretty quick because it was an Apple computer, and how where everything pretty much was not on his computer, and so all he was able to do is just pull the data from the cloud. So there is definitely advantage to living in this mobile, online, fast-pacing world, but we just have to realize that privacy is definitely a concern, and I think accepting it would be, you know, the first step, and then being smart, okay? Stay on the top of these things. At least you've got 10 things that you can, at least from the suggestions I have for you today, you've got 10 things you can already start putting in place for yourself. Very simple things, but effective, and sort of staying on the top of everything. And you know, one of the last pieces of advice I have for tonight is never let your guard down, okay? Regardless of what's going on, you always have to be on the lookout, okay? So any questions, comments, suggestions, leave them in the chat. I appreciate you guys coming. Hi, Lori. And I am about to be done. You can watch this in replay. Thanks for hopping on. Let me know what other practices you have in place, because I don't think I know them all, but these are the most typical and most common we put in place here at Main Street and at home. But if there's something better you know how to do, I am also willing to hear your ideas and share your thoughts with me. Appreciate you hopping on. This is Money Date. I'll play a little bit of my song for you today, but remember, confidence is something that can be learned. Okay? Good to have you guys here. Have a fantastic week. And Yuri and I need to figure out what we're going to have for dinner. Okay? So, I'll see you guys later. Take care.